Hello, this is Elena in my channel Enough. And today we're gonna talk about Kherson. In Ukraine, Kherson is liberated. What now? What gonna happen? And as much as we can predict, it will be more military information, which is I'm not a military expert. That is why I will tell you what other military experts, famous military experts, thinking about it. And since many of my people on my channel, many people who watching my videos are men, I have a little treat for you today. I know men like their toys, so I'll show you a few toys. Since I'm originally from Volgograd, which used to be Stalingrad during World War II, I brought some souvenirs from there. This is a real war, World War II. Bullets, and this particular one from PPSH, from Russian machine gun, and also could be used in TT, in Russian handgun. And this is very interesting bullet. It's actually Kainok. It made in England in about 1917 and so on, about this time period, and it was given to Tsar army of Russian Tsar before the revolution. And how come it is all related to Stalingrad battle, I'll tell you in the end of this video, and I'll explain why I brought it up. It's not a souvenir, even some people made it into one. They drained the gunpowder and they put it like made key holders out of that, but it's not. It's a real bullets from Stalingrad battle in 1942, in about that time period. So, and so we will talk about that as well. And I am a former economist and associate professor of several Russian universities, and now I am Canadian writer and traveler. I write mysteries, I write political books. In 2017 I published a political book about Russia, future of Russia, and about the war in Ukraine, where I predicted basically what happened in February of 2022. I wish I would have been mistaken, but I wasn't. And let's dive into it and talk about Kherson and about how it's gonna affect the situation and what is happening. Let's talk about Kherson. So Kherson is liberated. What's now? What? This is Ukrainian map. This is Kherson. It's on the river Dnieper. And let's see how it happened. This is an interactive map from 10th of November. So this is how it was happening. And for today, on the 11th of, 13th of November, Kherson is liberated, and Russian army retreated on the left bank of the river Dnieper. It's a big loss for Russia and for Putin, and but in Russia they're trying to hide it. Putin chicken didn't even show up to tell it to people, and now Sukharukov and Shoigu kinda they blaming them, which is they supposed to be in jail. According to, they put it in the constitution that the Russian Federation shouldn't be divided, and they considered it now Russian Federation since that stupid annexation they did. So basically they should be in jail for giving up Russian territories. And first of all, who has to be in jail is Putin, who started aggressive war, which is, again, according to Russian laws, he's supposed to be in jail. Turned out to be nobody in jail, everybody, except for actual Russian patriots who was against the war in Putin, who get 7 to 15 years in jail for calling a war a war. But today we're going to talk about Kherson. So this is interesting channel of Taras Berezovets. He is a anchorman and CEO, Fund of National Strategies, and military man of Ukraine. He has lots of interesting information and interesting videos. That's what he had to say in on November the 11th about Ukrainian army liberated Kherson, and he's saying that some experts I heard they saying that, oh, Russian army prepared and they retreated. No, they not prepared. They had plenty of time to prepare and they retreated badly. And according to Mr. Berezovets and some other sources I have, 10,000 Russians get surrounded. And that's what he has to say.
Известно, что на данный момент значительное количество подразделений противника продолжает оставаться на правом берегу Днепра. Речь идет приблизительно о 10 тысячах военнослужащих российской армии, которые не успели переправиться. Фактически их российское командование оставило на заклание.
He is saying that on the right side of the river, which is now liberated and its Ukrainian forces are there, about 10,000 Russian soldiers left, dumped by their commanders, and here's to go Russian. Putin's slogan of that war, we're not, how to translate it, we're not leaving our men behind. Yes, they do, and they did it during the whole war. They did it in Liman, they did it in Kharkov region, and now they're doing it in Kherson. They blow up couple bridges, Antonovsky Bridge and so on, across the river, and now Russian soldiers are dumped there. They're trying to escape, they're trying to build some sort of floating devices, and by the information from their cell phones and stuff like that, many of them just dead and their corpses floating down the Dnieper River to the Black Sea. And the worst part of it, Putin was trying to support Republican Party in the United States, and he hold people in Kherson, a Russian army, extra day, not allow them to retreat. And it turned out to be just to not interfere with American elections. He didn't get what he wanted. Trump supporters didn't get a landslide of votes, and yet Russian soldiers are died and dying right now, thanks to Putin. Dumping they still leaving some military equipment behind. According to Mr. Berezovets, it's quite a bit. It's not as much like it was in Liman, but it's still quite a bit. And it's tanks and everything.
Оставили их собственной судьбе. Они сейчас пытаются Херсонщину, неизвестные. И по анализу, который мы сейчас видим, ответить на этот вопрос не только военным, а и картину. Российские пропагандисты в большинстве своем сейчас сбежали, а те, кто не сбежали, они сейчас активно будут перекрашиваться.
Not everybody of Russians run away. Some of them stay there on purpose to sabotage things. But yet they didn't destroy enough of military equipment, and Russian and Ukrainian army got tanks and got lots of other things. And that was interesting on TV Rain. There was a very interesting story about changing in the war, about breaking point in the war in Kherson. And there was quite a few military experts I heard in this program and some other programs. And in particular, there was military expert and Vladimir Seleznyov, who was also chief of main headquarters of Ukrainian army. He was saying that they're not planning to. Ukrainian army doesn't plan to cross the river and go to Crimea that way, for instance. And also, there was quite a few military experts I want to talk to you about today. One of them is David Gendelman, and another one is Roman Svitan from Kiev, military expert. They give a lot of interesting information about what Ukrainian army gonna do now. Another information came from Ben Hodges. You know him as well, so let's see what kind of plans are. Different military experts saying different things, but many of them agreed on certain things. For example, there are about 4 different ideas. One about Ukrainian army is supposed to go towards that Zaporizhia region, towards Melitopol or Mariupol. Another group of experts thinking about Crimea, attacking Crimea and crossing the river. Another group of experts talking about more attacks on Donetsk and Lugansk and so on. And that's kind of basic ideas. I would think that according to Mr. Svitan, the main ideas are Ukraine would prefer to break this land bridge in any logical and good place, just to cut off the supplies and cut off this part of land and go to the Sea of Azov. It's either could go, so they're not planning to cross the river, which would not be smart because Russians kind of building here defense. And when the Russian army was leaving, they broke Antonov Bridge and few bridges, they blow them up, and it's not gonna be easy thing to do. So why to go difficult way if they can go easy way? And easy way would be one group of forces gonna go through Orekhov towards Melitopol and somehow that way break it, or they could go through Volnovakha and so on, and towards Mariupol. And as soon as this part would be broken and the Ukrainian forces will get to the Sea of Azov, so Russian forces here basically like in the pot, they would be surrounded, especially this bridge I told about in my other videos is already broken, and they're gonna probably destroy it even more. That's the Putin's favorite bridge. So basically that whole group of forces would be surrounded in here, and about 2 weeks maybe they would have supplies, and that's it. So they won't be able to fight with anything. And also could be through like Zaporizhia, close to here, and so that's the one idea what they can do, and they probably will, most likely, because it's also supported by Ben Hodges. He was saying more first Zaporizhia region and then Crimea. So most likely that's what's gonna happen. They also continue fighting, and the Russians trying to attack around Donetsk, especially around Bakhmut, like right here. So they're moving back and forth and getting kilometer here, kilometer there, but that's about it. Nothing really major they can do in here either. That's why some Russian experts saying that, oh, just because they now cross the river and they could probably take 2 groups of Russian troops and move them from here to other places, to like Bakhmut, to Donetsk, and so on. But so can do Ukrainians, and it's not gonna help Russians. If to talk about Kherson is, and in general this bank of the river on which Ukrainian forces are, it's a high ground, so they can use artillery very effectively and shoot at Russian positions, especially some certain artillery shells from NATO. They kind of have a little bit longer range, 5 to 7 kilometers and so on. So Ukrainians are pretty good there, so they don't need to do any major crossing the river on attacks or anything. They just all they have to do just break that land bridge and surround this area and basically squeeze them like they did in Kherson and wait until Russians give up. Especially winter not gonna help Russians this time. Ukrainians fighting in winter for 9 years now. They know exactly what's gonna happen in what time. It's not like Saskatchewan where the weather is unpredictable. Here you can predict when it's gonna freeze, what can and what not, and they can really easily to continue during the winter. So don't expect Ukrainian stop just because it's winter. It's a bad idea. It's not gonna happen. And another thing I wanted to tell you that some attacks would be here. Ukrainians not gonna abandon this front, and they might go towards Lugansk and Matveyevka and so on. Makiivka there. So that's another way. Also, Ukrainians expecting to receive HIMARS, more rockets for HIMARS, and according to Ben Hodges, also GMLRS, or it could be ATACMS. And this is the range, how far they can reach. This is what with just GMLRS, they can reach basically Crimea now. And the more they can reach supply, they can cut off from supplies, the faster the Russians will give up there. And if they get ATMCS, Block 1, 165 kilometers range, this would be how far they can shoot with that. And the next one, 300 kilometers range. So this is how far that can happen. So basically, Ukraine in very good condition. Ukraine is winning the war and basically won. Putin is only delaying something which can happen. Just the war is lost. It's only, according to Mr. Katz, and I agree with him, I'm showing you his video right now about that, it's only sending Russian troops to die. Just because Putin might not lose the war this year, he might lose it in spring or in summer. And it's only delaying something which can happen anyway. And throwing more and more Russian troops to die for no reason whatsoever in a lost war. Putin shouldn't have started that war, but he did, and he lost. He knows that, so knows his generals and so on. They're just trying to delay by throwing more and more Russian lives and Ukrainian lives for no reason whatsoever. So, and talking about Russian army, Mr. Katz has a very good video about that, why mobilized people gonna die. And there are lots of information in there. I would recommend to watch that. Basically, as you can see even on this picture, that young man, a commander, basically, teaching soldiers how to shoot, and he grabbing the gun by the end of it. Every normal person, not even military expert, you don't need to be military expert or officer to know you never do that, even if you know the gun isn't loaded. And this happened during the Shoigu visit on some elite, specially prepared for his visit, super best army training grounds. And if that is happening, it's not somebody's video from your Telegram channel. This is an official Russian propaganda channel. And they posted that kind of stupid thing on their channel, showing how their officer teaching soldiers how to shoot by grabbing the end of his gun. As you know, Russia was considered to be second army in the world, but they not. And the war in Ukraine proved it many times. So what's gonna happen? Because Russians doesn't have enough weapons, even like expert Mr. Samush said in the last video I provided about mobilization, will mobilization save Putin, for instance. He's saying that Russian mobilized people, they don't have ammunition, they don't have tanks, they don't have equipment, and nothing you can do when you have 3 shovels on the 570 people, and you don't have enough even if you do have machine gun, what you're gonna do against HIMARS and anything. But the big problems with Russian army are not just corruption, which is terrible, on every level, completely from top to bottom. And if something wasn't stolen on top, it will be stolen on the bottom. If you think you sent 100 machine guns into certain military or 100 boots, pair of boots into certain military unit, and you just stole bunch of them and only 100 left, so you send that 100, it will most likely, big chunk of it, if not all of it, will be stolen in the bottom level. Some sergeants, lieutenants, and so on gonna steal it. But the most important part is that Russians doesn't have commanders. They don't have sergeants, they don't have lieutenants, they don't have officers with experience who can teach soldiers. Many of them died in the first days of invasion, and they were in those 200,000 troops who invaded Ukraine in February, and many of them are already dead. There is nobody to train these soldiers. That is why no matter how many days of training they have, nobody can actually train them. Nobody can lead them. Nobody can, if you even ever was a leader of some sort, or in a peaceful time, like you run the store with employees, or you know you are a manager of any kind, you know how there are limits how many people you can manage at the same time without a little manager kind of under you who is kind of helping you doing that. You can't really run and teach by yourself whole bunch of untrained people, let alone soldiers, in the battlefield when they don't have any training and you don't even have officers to teach them. So this is one of the main parts. And so on, they don't have equipment, they don't have clothes, they don't have food. They're gonna freeze. At least Canada sent, and some other countries sent a whole bunch of warm clothes and boots to Ukraine, and nobody did it to Russia. So Russian troops gonna freeze, Russian troops gonna die, and that's why they're doing 3 lines of attack. On the front line would be criminals who they just get out of prison to use them as a cannon fodder, and the second line would be those freshly mobilized soldiers, and on the third line would be like Wagner group or some more trained soldiers, which they're gonna shoot at those 2 lines ahead of them who is trying to retreat. If some soldiers trying to retreat, if first line trying to retreat, the second line shooting at them. If second line trying to retreat, the third line shooting at them. That's what it's for. Russian soldiers shooting at themselves. That's how it works right now. When I heard of that used in the Battle of Stalingrad, like, I didn't believe it's true. I thought Russians defending Stalingrad because they were so patriotic. Well, it was used even in Stalingrad battle, when they was just simply shooting their own soldiers who tried to retreat in a horrible battle. My city of Volgograd used to be Stalingrad, it was leveled. I was working in a collective farms when I was become a student of university, and we went to the we were sent by our university to work in the collective farms for a month or two to help them to pick up potato from the fields. From the university, we was mandatory sent to there, and this is what we were finding on our between potatoes. It was over several decades past since the war at the time, and we were every year finding this stuff, a lot of it. We was finding grenades, we were finding those bullets and everything. And I wanted to talk about Kainok, that bullet from 1917, even some of them I think maybe even 1914, even earlier than that, they were used in Stalingrad battle. Well, those particular ones, I think they were used more for training purposes, for training soldiers. They wasn't maybe used actually in the battle, but they might have. So this is the equipment Russians were fighting in World War II, and now they're fighting with antique tanks from 1960s and so on. So enormous corruption, no logistics whatsoever, no supplies, no training, and so on. It's not gonna be good for Russian army at all. And you saw the results of it in Liman, you saw the results of it in Izium, you saw that in Kharkov region, you saw it in Kherson. And that big victory of Ukraine in Kherson, it's, in my opinion, a turning point in the war, and from now on it's only gonna be worse for Russian army. Most likely the Russian army group will be encircled in the port, basically in from around Kherson and Crimea, and in a couple of weeks they will run out of supplies. Basic and simple. That's what's gonna happen. That's what lots of military experts, even Ruslan Lviv and Viktor Fedorov, and the experts I told you about today, that's what military experts are thinking. If you have any questions, please write to me in the comments, and I'll try to answer them. Thank you for your attention, and have a great time of the day, or it depends, evening you have or a morning. Please educate yourself, help Ukraine. Putin must be stopped.